Hello everybody, I hope you're all well today. It's Jem here, back in the colour cave and back to our fish in Animorphia for the next part of the colour along. Now I am hoping today, fingers crossed, that we're not going to have any more technological disasters. I have been playing about with the camera on my iPhone and it seems to be doing a reasonably good job, so I am quietly optimistic. Anyway, let's have some fun today. And, we've been doing a lot of scales and we've been doing a lot of, all this kind of like, fins and things. So what I'd like to try and do today is to finish off all our little Caricatures and all the sort of itty bitty parts on this right-hand page. If we get through all that, what I'm going to do is, dun dun dun, I'm going to go to the other page. Ooh. And what we'll do on this side is I will speed colour maybe one or two of the fins, depending on how much time we have. Now again, I'm just going to be using exactly the same method as I've done over here, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch the gradients round. So for the top and bottom fins, I'm going to start the light colouring at the bottom and have the darker orange at the top, and with the tail fin vice versa. So we will be using the same colours on this side, but they'll just be switched round. And it's just to keep the uniformity of the entire double page spread, but just to add a little bit of interest and also so that we don't get bored. So that is the plan, but we'll see how we go time-wise. I know the last video was really short for aforementioned reasons, but the video before that was absolutely epic, so we'll kind of try and balance it out today. So on this side, what I think I'm going to do is I'm just going to start at the bottom and pick up the little bits and bobs that we've not coloured and work my way up. That seems like a good plan. So what I'm going to do is start down in this little corner. Okay, so what I've got down here is this little star here, which I'm going to keep the same as this one. Now I have taken a note of all the colours that I've used, and for this we were using canary yellow and a wee bit of sunburst yellow as well, I do believe, just to put in these wee lines here. So let's just get going, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that my pencil is super duper sharp because we are into these sort of finer parts of the picture now. So as always, I'm just going in with a really light layer of the canary yellow, which is PC116 if you're interested. I'm kind of getting to the point where I'm losing the losing the numbers and names and things on this pencil. Is getting a little bit diddy. There we go. So we're going to do that and then just add in a really hard, fast line, just going into each of the points of that. Start, and then I'm going to go back in with a heavier hand. And I'm going to leave a little bit of the lighter shade on this side, just to give it almost like a wee highlight. There we go, fabulous. Now the next thing we've got is this sort of swordy fish type guy. I might use the blues that we had used down here and also in the back of the postage stamp, if you remember. So that was Peacock Blue and Indigo were the main colours. Yep, so Peacock Blue, PC 1027, and the Blue Indigo, which is PC 901. So we'll have a go with those. And I think what I'll do as well is I will introduce the sky blue light, because I don't want the details of this guy to just sort of disappear because the colours are so dark. So we're going to be careful as to where we use our colours. So sky blue light is PC 1086. Okie dokie. So I think we'll have the shaded areas we'll have darker, so we'll use the indigo in there. And what I'm going to do is start at the bottom of these stripes and just have that going from dark to light towards the top of our little friend. I'll do the same here. Now don't worry when you're doing this if you start too light at the bottom here, don't panic, that's absolutely fine, because you can go back in and darken it down. I do have quite a light hand, and that is a product of being too much the other way. I used to have like a total death grip, and I think I'm actually too light-handed now, and I could do with going back the way. However, I'm not going to complain. I think this might be the start of his fin on the edge of the page, but just as it is at the edge of the page, I'm just going to keep that uniform with the rest of it and pretend it's a stripe, because I don't really know for sure. Now, at the bottom here, there's two ways to do this. If you're thinking about the curvature of the fish like we did over that side with the big fish, then really what you want to do is you'd want to have dark at the bottom and light at the top. However, that is the underside of the fish, and he is tucked quite far away, so I think I'm just going to put that more or less an even colour with the darker blue. Then again, that's more thinking about the light source as coming from, you know, this sort of angle. That's my kind of thinking with that. So I'll take the Peacock Blue now. Now, bearing in mind this is going to be the stripes are the darkest part of the fish, so I'm going to work in quite a lot of this Peacock Blue. Now, I find with this pencil that it is quite soft and it is quite pigmented for a blue. Generally, the blue hues don't lay down as richly as some of the other colours, but this Peacock Blue is amazing, so you don't have to press heavily. And I have found that across the board with pencils, not just with Prismacolors, I don't mean that. And it's just the pigments that they use to actually make the colour in the pencil. So there we go, and I'm going to go over that whole bottom bit there. Okay, so now that I've got those two colours down, I can go back with the indigo and I can start kind of working in until I get the desired contrast and blend between these two colours on these stripy bits. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, this is down to your preference, so you work away until you're happy. This isn't about copying me, this is about you being happy. So I think that I want to have more of this indigo down in this corner. Just make it really dark down in that corner and then back in. So again, this is, I'm trying to not teach you, I'm not trying to teach you, that sounds really condescending. I'm trying to show you that although this is a colour along, and I know that there are a few of you following along, be a bit more independent, make those choices yourself. That's important, because if you follow a colour along blindly, you're never going to develop your skills. So you might decide to do these colours the opposite way round, or you might decide that you want to bring the indigo much, much further up, say like up to here. That is entirely up to you, but don't be frightened to do these kind of things. That is important that you test things like that out and go your own way. I'm going to keep his little fin here the same as well. So I'm just going to do what I did with the stripes and work between these two colours. These colours go really well together, and it's not a combination that I've used before. But yeah, I quite like it. There we go. So for the main body of him, I'm going to introduce this sky blue light as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the bottom with a light layer of this Peacock Blue. And I'm just going to work my way up. I'm just going to do his body for now. And I'm putting that to almost nothing. And I'm actually not touching the very top part with the pencil at all. And then I'll go back in and I can darken down in the bottom here. This is such a pretty colour on its own. You know, you don't have to blend or mix this with anything. It's just a really, really nice colour. I really like it. Hello, Jock. Collie's come in to see me. He's just wandering about. Oh no, he's away again. He doesn't know what to do with himself today. It's very damp outside, and there's no work for him just now because we're mostly harvesting. So he's just kind of like mooching about. Maybe fall asleep on the couch or something. Okay, that looks pretty nice to me. So now I'm taking the sky blue light and I'm going over the top of everything with a medium pressure. And you can see that starting to blend out now, which is exactly what I was looking for. Yeah, quite a firm pressure, I would say. And work this up round. Try and get that reasonably smooth. And then I'm going to bring that all the way to the top. And the same round here. Now just before I go into his face, I'm going to put a really dark line of that Peacock Blue in there behind his gill. And then just blend it out toward everything else. And there we go. That's pretty good. Okay, so kind of like we did with Big Fish as well, we're thinking about the highlight area, which is just going to run right along the top edge of his little face. So when I'm using the Peacock Blue, underneath here is essentially in shadow, so I'm going to press really heavily right under his mouth there and lighten it up a little bit as I bring it round here. I'm not going to start going into, you know, like curvatures and things like we did with the mouth of the Big Fish, because you just don't have space for it really. But we still want to, you know, we still want to have these little effects and tricks in there as much as we can without fussing too much, because you're going to end up, you know, trying to squish in too much and it's probably not going to benefit you. So I'm just doing the same thing again. I'm back with this sky blue light. And I'll just blend that all out up towards the top there. There we go. Take that over his eye. There! Ah, what a pretty chap he is. Alright, next little thing we've got is this envelope, or envelope, depending on who you're from. I say envelope. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to use the same colours as I used for this sort of scrap of paper. Eggshell, PC 140, artichoke, PC 1098, and the ginger root, see if I can get that to focus, is PC 1084. Okay, so we're going to do the sort of traditional route with this again and start with the lightest colour. So I'm just going to take the eggshell really lightly, quick scribble over, not taking much care over it because we're going to do, you know, a good couple more layers on top of it. So again, right now thinking about the envelope, this part here overlaps this part and our light's coming from roughly this direction. So the first most obvious place for me to work on is this underside here. So with my next darkest colour, which is the ginger root, I'm just going to work a little bit of that in there and bring it over to the corner. And then I'm going to take my artichoke, which is the darkest colour, and I'm going to add in that line there, which is essentially my shadow. And I'm going to make it quite heavy next to the line work that Kerby has, and just sort of tickle a little bit over there. And back to the ginger root, start to blend this, bring this up a bit. There we go. And on the top here, I'm going to use the ginger root on this side. And I'm going to go quite heavy down in this corner. And as I go up, I'm gradually letting off the pressure to blend that in with the eggshell, because this is where the highlight is, so to speak. I don't think there would be much of a highlight on a soggy piece of paper, but hey, let's be optimistic. Alright, so moving on up now, we've got some of our Kerby creatures. We've got this one here and we've got this guy here. And this is the real fun bit for me because, as I say, I have a sort of thing about these, and I use the neon pencils, and I don't really do much shading with them or anything. It's just a little bit of fun, and it's nice and quick, and it's a chance for me to use these neon pencils because I really don't use them. Now, I had already used the pink further down, so I'm gonna go with the orange, which is, it's actually quite an offensive colour. But first of all, I'm just gonna fix this little guy's eyes. I'll give him bigger eyes. There we go, make him happy. Look. Oh, isn't he lovely? See what I mean? It doesn't actually look as bad on camera, which is always something, I suppose. But it is really, really bright. I'm just going to leave a little bit of white down the front. He's kind of hiding under the sea foam. But I'll give him a little bit of a highlight round the front. Oh, these pencils crack me up. They're just ridiculous. It is nice to have a use for them, though. I don't like the thought. I'm not a person that has like oodles and oodles of supplies that just sit languishing and don't get used. Excuse me. I'm a person who only buys things that I will use, and if I haven't used them or I find that I don't have a use for them, I will give them away. I don't like clutter, and I'm definitely like, I'm the polar opposite of a hoarder. I really am. So I'm glad to find a use for these pencils because otherwise I wouldn't be happy with them just sort of sitting in the case doing nothing. Alright, on to this bigger guy now who looks as if he's having a wee party to himself. Let's have him looking up. What's he looking up at? Is he looking up at the little guy that's up beside him? I don't know. Alright, so the other neon colour that I've got that I haven't used yet is the neon yellow. So let's have a go with that as well. Oh, goodness me. This pencil is really scratchy. I don't know whether I've got a dud or whether it's just like a part of the lead that's maybe, you know, it's got a flaw in it kind of thing. But if I turn the pencil a certain way, it's really, really scratchy. You know, like a really cheap kid's pencil you would buy from the supermarket. That's what it feels like. But it's only if I turn it a certain way. So we'll see how we go. So again, thinking about where my light source is coming from, I'm going to leave him wee bits of white just along the top of his hairdo. It's almost like, it's like a rounded Bart Simpson hairdo he's got. That shows up really well where I haven't used the pencil on the camera. That's impressive, I like that. I don't have to do much explaining there. And I'm just going to pop a little bit in here and press a little bit harder on this bottom half of him. There we go. And on to the next one. Oh, he's a happy chappy. Look at him. He's got a wee smiley face on him. I love these. I'm just going to fill his mouth in and I'm going to use the dark indigo. Just because it's to hand. Yeah. And I'm going to go back to the pink. So I'm basically just rotating through these neon colours. So we'll fill in his little tentacly bits. He looks like one of the ghosts from Pac-Man, doesn't he? Not a space hopper this time. Try and get a sort of shiny highlight on him. There we go. And just fill in the rest of this. Ha! Super cute. Okay, so moving over here now, I'll fill this little guy in first, just while I've got the neons to hand. This poor guy doesn't have a mouth. That's a shame for him. I sometimes wonder how Kerby decides what creatures are going where and whether they're going to have mouths or noses or anything, or whether he just does it at random, because he must have drawn millions of them in his lifetime. So I wonder if he draws them, you know, like the way that you and I would draw a stick man, you know, just don't give it much thought and he just sort of, you know, whaps them down. I'd be really interested to find that out. So over here we've got these kind of sort of frondy things again, and I think I'm going to stick with what we did down the bottom here with these ones. I really like those colours together, and as we move up the page it's going to help balance out our colour selection, because there's, as it stands up this top part of the page, there's no green at all. So let's do that. And the colours that we used with that was chartreuse and apple green. Chartreuse is PC189. Again, I can't show you because that is literally what is left of my chartreuse. I still don't need a new one yet though, so I can still sharpen it. And what did I say? Apple green, which is PC912, and there is not much left of that either. That I'm zoomed in so far and that pencil almost fits in the shot. That's ridiculous. But yeah, all of my green pencils are like that. My chartreuse no longer fits in my Tagal sharpener. It just doesn't fit, so I have to go and get my other sharpener. Okay, there we go. So this is a much longer point than I would normally like on my Prismacolors, because they are soft and they're quite prone to breaking. However, when you've only got that much pencil left, there's only so much you can do. Normally I like my points shorter and stubbier, more like that. So you can see the difference, and having them shorter like that, there's just less chance of breakage. But as I say, beggars can't be choosers when you've got literally about 6 centimetres of pencil left. So we'll go easy, we'll see how we go. Okay, so back to what we were doing. That's enough digression for now. I'm going to just put down a light layer of this chartreuse, and I am being really light-handed because of the length of the point. You'll probably be able to press a little harder than I'm doing. I don't want to break it at this stage. It's not a hassle, I do have a replacement, but I don't know, in the interests of preservation. So I'm just going to go all the way over here, do this part as well, and in here, and here. There we go, so we've got that nice first layer, and then I'll take the apple green, and I'm pressing really hard. Excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat today. Pressing really hard and just putting in a line of that apple green all the way down one side of each of these fronds. I can't even call them fronds, but yeah, you know what I mean anyway. So often in colouring pages, everyone wants to blend, everything's got to be smooth, you know, and it's seamless and all the rest of it. Sometimes it's really nice to do something different, and that is exactly my plan here. Let's not blend for a change. Let's have some really harsh lines, particularly in a picture like this where it's not, you know, like a hyper realistic picture. Although his fish are very, very good, but you know, with all these creatures and things, have a bit of fun with stuff like this. Don't take it too seriously. Right, okay, so I'm going to avoid the apple green areas now because I want to keep that defined line as much as possible, but I'm going back in with the chartreuse and I'm pressing quite heavily, but I'm trying to avoid running into that apple green as much as possible. Now don't worry if you do sort of blend it a wee bit, you'll still get the overall effect. Oh, my tip's crumbling in my chartreuse. Oh no. There we go. And in there as well. Nice heavy hand. Get that colour down there. Make it stand out. That's what we want. I just had a quick pit stop there for a cup of tea. One needs tea. I've been out for a run this morning. That was something that I talked about before actually. I was struggling a little bit getting to back out to run. But one of the things I find, especially when it's damp like today, I do get cold very quickly after I come back. So the best thing to do is get some hot liquid in me. Anyway, that is completely beside the point. I was just swithering what to do with this little part in here. And I think I'm going to use the Seafoam colours. So that was the muted turquoise and the sky blue light. So I'm just going to grab them and just fill that little bit in, I think. Okay, here we go. So I'm just gonna squish a little bit of that in there and up here. Not paying much attention to it. It's such a tiny part of the picture. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. And I'll just put one heavy coat of the sky blue light over the top, and there we go. So these parts here, I could treat that as a bubble, however, because it's in the back, it's in the foreground of what we've just done with the same colours. When I was over here a little bit, I had done these sort of fragments in purple, so I'm going to do the same with these up here. So I'm going to revert back to my purple colours. This is one of these days where like every pencil's going to end up out my pencil case. So we're going back to our very familiar combination of the dioxazine purple, which is PC132, the Parma violet, which is PC1008, and the final colour, which is the lilac, and that is PC956. So start with the lilac, and I'm just going to put a light layer down on all these little bitty bits. This one in here. If you want to do these in the seafoamy colours, please feel free, go ahead. And I'm taking the Parma violet and just doing that little C shape that I like to do, again trying to preserve some sort of highlight. Oh, excuse me. And I'll do the same down here, and I'm just using a very light hand, little circular motions as per usual, nothing new there. This little bit right on the edge I'm not too bothered about either, I'll just kind of like squish that in. So I'll take the dioxazine now and just keep that to a minimum. I don't really need a lot of that down anywhere. Try and move my hand out the way so you can see what I'm doing. Put a little bit of it down there as well. There we go, and then finally just back in with that lilac and light hand over the top of everything. I've left a tiny sliver of white there, you can see that quite clearly on both of those. And again, that's just a sort of highlighty type effort. Okie dokie. That's good, so let's move up here now. So I have to decide what to do with this cat, and I think what I might do is I'm going to make these green like the other ones, again just to keep that consistency. But one of the other sets of colours that we've used in this picture that I haven't used again was the colours down at the bottom for our little swimmy turtle friend. So I think I'm going to kind of go with more of the brown variations that we used rather than leaning towards the green. So again, I did write all those colours down, which was quite handy, and I think what we'll do is I'll use, as I say, the kind of brownier colours for that particular part. So the three colours that I'm going to use is the lime peel, PC1005, green ochre, PC1091, and sepia, PC948. Now I'm going to use the lime peel sparingly. Let's see if I can get this in shot. There we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the darkest colour because I want this to be more brown than green. So I'm going to start with the sepia, and I am going to go over all Kerby's hatching in these areas here, just very lightly first till we figure out where we're going to put the colours down. A little bit in there as well. So that's me kind of made a guideline, if you like. So anything underneath these areas that I've coloured, I'm going to make sepia as well. So these are essentially going to be the darkest areas. So what I want to do now is just build a little bit of that up and just gradually tail it off towards the top there, because I'm going to blend in other colours. So this part under his belly particularly, I want to make as dark as possible, but I'm just going to do it in layers, the way we have been doing. Okay, so that's a good start, but I'm going to bring this sepia right down, very lightly, down to the bottom of our little pussycat arms here. You can see that. And then down in here, because I'm absolutely certain, I am just going to fire in with this sepia and press quite heavily, and under his armpit as well. And then as I come up to that hatched area, I'm just going to start letting up a little bit, and I'm going to carry on up lightly up round here to his stripes. And I'm going to do the same down here. And the same on his tail as well. Can you see that? Okay, there we go. That's a bit better, isn't it? You'll be like, oh, Jem, can't see because of your big fat fingers. Move them. It is quite difficult, and it's one of those things that as a YouTuber you kind of like learn as you go along, as you get more practice, like where to move your hand to so that your viewers can actually see what's going on. It's not always possible though, because your hand only bends a certain way most of the time. Oh dear, but it does come with practice, I think. There we go. Just put a wee bit of that up there. Really, really lightly here. I'm not putting any pressure at all. I'm just letting the pencil go over the paper. With the green ochre, I'm going to start at its tail. Now I'm going over the sepia, and just very lightly I'm starting to blend that in, and then I'm bringing the green ochre up almost to that top line, but not quite. I'm just going to go over it a couple of times and really start to get the colour down. So that's given the cat quite an interesting colour. I'm thinking he's kind of a sea cat, so, you know, green might be a bit more of an appropriate colour for him. I don't know. Now, what's standing out to me here is this top part of his hind leg. I'm going to use the lime peel here because that would be a highlighted area because it juts out and up. So I'm just going to put a tiny wee tickle of that there. And then what I'll do is I'm going to use a combination of the green ochre and the sepia and blend that all in together. So again, I'll make this a bit darker down here and then start to pull up a little bit as I head more towards the top of the cat. I mean, I'm assuming he's a cat. It looks like a cat to me. I'm still baffled as to why he would be in the water. Maybe he's jumped in to try and eat the fish. You know how you see like cats sitting at fish bowls trying to paw the water? Maybe that's the idea. Okay, so I'm using the green ochre now, and I'm just going to try and blend that lime peel and the sepia together. And I'm going to take the green ochre all the way up there. Join that up a little bit. There we go. Okay, so I'm not particularly happy with the lime peel. It is quite stark. So I'm going to go over it with the green ochre very, very lightly just to kind of like mute it a little bit. It'll still show up as being lighter, but it's just not quite as bright and vibrant. So you can see there, that's made a difference already. That's pretty cool. That's what I was looking for. So bearing that in mind, when I'm going up here with the green ochre, I'm going to take it all the way up because I was going to use a little bit of lime peel over the top as well. So I want to keep that as consistent as possible. So let's do that. Again, a little bit more pressure, a little bit heavier down the bottom here when you're going into that darkest sepia that you've put in. And also around this sort of crease of his leg, I'm going to press a little bit harder. And then just pull up a little bit and bring that up there. And then we'll press heavy here and lighten it up. Okay, so you might have to be a little bit selective about where you're putting your lime peel. So I'm just going to use a really light hand. Again, you can go back in if it's not really having any impact and you think, oh, well, that was a bit pointless. You can always go back in and make it a little bit heavier. But as always, you're better to start light and work your way, you know, up to the level of vibrancy you want, because it's much more difficult to go in the opposite direction. I'm just going to leave that darker in that particular bit because it's round the back. Even things up a bit here. There we go. All right. He looks pretty mean. I think I'm going to fill his eye in completely. He's got quite a piggy shaped face, even though he's got a cat's body. Is it just me? Okay, so green ochre here. Over the top of my sepia, light hand. Bring it up. Mix it in. Now where his head is, that's going to be quite dark under there, so I'm going to lean a bit heavier with the green ochre layer. And then just graduate that out where his front of his legs are more exposed. And I'm just going to put a tiny little squish of this lime peel along there. and the green ochre for the leg that's in behind. And just leave that little white edge. So far so good. And with the top of his head here, I'm going to use the line peel again. I'm going to go over it again, but I'm going to put that down first just so that I know where I want these sort of highlighted areas to be. Take the green ochre and do his ears. I'll start to join all this up now. Very lightly over the top of the line peel. Now I'm going to take the sepia just down under his, at the bottom of his jawline here, and blend that up into the green ochre. So I'm pressing really hard next to the line art, and then just letting go a little bit. And then I'm going to use the green ochre just to sort of bring everything together now, because he's looking a little bit patchy, but by the time I've done this, he'll not look as patchy. Press a wee bit harder here as well. I missed a spot here with my line peel. Back over that with the green ochre. There we go. As for his stripes, I think I'll just use the sepia for his stripes, just like flat sepia, because I think that's pretty dark and I don't want to use black. So I'm just going to go straight in there and block colour. All the way around. And then I'm going to show you a little trick that I like to use sometimes when I'm only using one colour. Okay, so that's the stripes filled in. And what I'm doing is I'm going to take my little Tombow mono eraser. And it's got a really tiny tip on it. Yeah, it's absolutely toty. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to rub the top part of that sepia for a highlight. Now, if you don't have one of these erasers or you don't want to do this, just leave it, you know, a little bit of lighter pressure when you're actually colouring it in. But I find it gives a really subtle highlight without actually having to do anything. You can see that's actually turned out really well. You can see that it's lighter, but it doesn't, you know, it's not blindingly obvious, because I did want them quite dark. So that's that, and I'm just going to move on to these fronds now and do them the same way as we did them before with my tiny chartreuse. So I'll get going on that. That's fine. So yeah, I've been out for my run this morning. I'm starting to get back into it. I really struggled after the wedding to get back into a routine, and it's really unlike me, because I really enjoy running. It's not something that I find a chore at all, but I just couldn't seem to get my, you know, the mindset back. However, I've been out a couple of times now, and I do always find I work better when I have something to work towards. So I have booked myself in for a race at the beginning of November. I'm just switching over to my apple green now. Yeah, just having a goal to work towards seems to help me stay focused, and it gives me, you know, a bit of purpose for my running. And the race that I have booked myself in for, I ran it last year. And it's quite a unique race in that it takes place at night, which is quite unusual, and there's a lot of emphasis put on light and bright because you're running in November, you know, in the dark. It's quite a fun event, and it's quite well set up, and it is at a place called the Kelpies, and the Kelpies are giant horse, not statues, they're sculptures, they're metal sculptures, and they're like, you know, they're massive, they're absolutely giant, but at night time they light them all up, and it is one of the most spectacular things you will ever see. And the race itself has a really strange atmosphere compared to normal races. Races are usually quite noisy, bubbly things, and you know, you can feel the energy and everything of everyone that's either excited or nervous or whatever. And running that race at the Kelpies, it is such a strange atmosphere. It's really calm, and it's really nice. It's when you're running round, normally you can hear people chatting away and, you know, there's a bit of laughing and stuff going on. And this race, everyone almost feels as if they have to whisper. I don't know whether it's because it's at night, but it's so strange. And one of the things that they do, they give you a head torch to wear to run round the race. And everybody puts them on and, you know, starts running. So even if you get like round maybe 5 minutes, and if you stop and look behind you, all you can see is thousands of these head torches bobbing up and down behind you. And in this sort of really quiet, you know, all you can hear is like people's footfalls. It is the strangest thing, but it's so nice. And then when you get round the course, the kelpies come into view and it's just spectacular. And people actually stop mid-race to take photographs, which is really nice as well. It's really well organised and it's a lovely space. You know, it's not as if people are holding you up by stopping or anything. So I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm hoping that I can beat last year's time, which was pretty good. You know, I did have a good run last year, so I'm quite excited about that. And just the same as before, I'm going to use my Canary Yellow PC116, little coat of that, and then I am taking my Sunburst Yellow and I'm just going to put in a little flick of that here, and then go back over it with the Canary Yellow. It's funny, I realise how excited I get when I start talking about running, and for a lot of people it is really boring. It's not interesting at all, so I'm sorry if that was tedious for you, but it's just something that I'm really passionate about, so I am really looking forward to it. Okay, so what we've got left here is another star, another Kerby creature, and this apple core, and then this other fish. So I'll do the star and the Kerby creature first. That's a good idea. Yeah, so this year with the race as well, the other thing that's happening is I've been running a long time in various shapes and forms, and I have helped people to get started running. So last year I had one person with me, and that was, I took her through her first 5k race, which it was actually quite good. She did really well. She had been very unwell on the run up to the race, so she missed a lot of training, and she still managed to finish, which was amazing. So she's going to run again this year, but I also have another 2 new runners, and they are absolute beginners. So between now and then, it is my job to get them running to the point where they can run a full 5k, which is just over 3 miles, without having to stop and walk, and so that when they come to the race, which they have booked themselves in for, that they can get round themselves. And it's something else as well that keeps me motivated too, you know, having other people to look after, sort of thing. My success rate is 100% so far. Everyone that I have taken out that's been an absolute beginner, they have all completed a proper 5 kilometre organised race. So I'm optimistic, and it's good fun as well. It's good for me because, you know, I've got to lead by example as well. So it's very rewarding for me. Everyone always thanks me, and, you know, although they all really appreciate it, but people don't realise that it's rewarding for me too, and I don't do it for praise from other people. I do it for self-satisfaction. So yes, I'm taking a couple of girls out and training them as well, which is, it's good fun as well, and try and sort of pass on some of my knowledge, a bit like I do here on this channel. Okay, so we've got this apple, and this apple's just screaming out that it has to be red. However, because of the colour scheme in the picture, I'm going to completely go against my gut, and I'm going to use the greens that I have used down for all the way down here, down, and these leaves down the bottom here. So that was the apple green, which we'd been using previously, and it is also the grass green. So my grass green's not in much better condition either. Oh my, I can still sharpen this in my Tagal sharpener though, so that's good. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the apple green, and I am going to put down a quick layer of that, leaving a little highlight on the top. And I'm going to do the same on the bottom, minus the highlight, so just a layer of the apple green. And then I'm going to take the grass green, which I've just sharpened, And I'm just going to darken down. I know you can't see what I'm doing here, guys. It's because this pencil's so small. I'm running a line of the grass green along the bottom of that apple core. There you are. I don't know if you can see that now, but literally just along that bottom edge there. And then I'm going to go back with the apple green and blend those in together. Like so. And that just gives it a really nice colour. I really like those two colours blended together. And on this top part, just where the stem's poking out, I'm going to take this grass green again and do the same thing. I'm just going to put a line underneath it. And that is the only place I'm going to do it. And then taking my apple green again, I'm going to blend, and I'm pressing quite hard and because I'm totally wanting to smush these together. And then I'm going to continue out with a heavy hand with the apple green and just leave a tiny, tiny little bit of white along the top there. Ta-da! I'm now going to grab my eggshell and I'm going to colour the middle of this apple core, and I'm going to press really, really hard. One solid flat coat, just like that. Super duper. And then I'm going to take the sepia just because it's to hand, and I'm going to just line the stock very lightly with that. And then I'm going to take my canary yellow and go over the top of it just to mix the colour a little bit. There we go, that looks absolutely fine and dandy to me. Now the last thing we've got on this page is this guy here, and again we have to kind of decide what colours we want to use for him. And the colours that we've used so far, I really want to use those the set of darker blues that we had used down in this corner. Now again, it's to balance out the picture and where we're using the colours. That's why I'm deciding to do it. If you want to go multicolour swap shop and pick some other colours, that is absolutely fine. Again, this is just preference, and I do like a bit of uniformity in my pictures. So I'm going back then to the Peacock Blue, the indigo and the sky blue light, and those are the colours that I am going to use. And I'm going to do it exactly the same way, the same method as before, except this time I don't have stripes to fill in, but I have fins to do instead. So the way I did the stripes, that's how I'm going to do the fins. So let me just turn this a little bit, make it easier for me. So this is the Peacock Blue, so I'm using a light hand here. And I'm just going to bring that all the way up and round. Now, because of the light source here, he is really high up the page. So you can use the same method here that we used for the big fish. I'll just move this down so you can see that. So you could have a highlighted stripe in the middle of him and just have this top section a bit lighter if that's what you wanted to do. So I think I'm maybe going to try and replicate that here, but I'm going to have to be very careful of how heavily I'm pressing down. So I'm just going to run a really light line along the top of our fishy friend here. He's more like an eel, isn't he? Except it's got, well, I don't know. And then down the bottom here, I'm going to lean a wee bit heavier and go back over this section, just letting up the pressure as I go, and I'm going to create that highlight in the middle. And just work away. I'm not going to spend a great amount of time over it. In behind his little fin that's popping out there, I'm just going to darken that down a wee bitty, and then I'm going to make that really dark in this corner. Just blend that together so it's a little bit more gradual. And I think I'm maybe going to go and put a little bit more here, just really lightly. If you struggle with having a light hand, the best thing to do is practice the angle that you hold your pencil at. The flatter your pencil, the lighter stroke you're going to be able to get, and also the further up the pencil you hold it, the less you can actually press down. So that's my two tips, is angle and how far up the pencil you are, and that will help you lighten your hand up if you're not, you know, if it's something that you struggle with a little bit. I know I did for a very long time. As I say, I'm too much the other way now, that's my problem. Okay, so I'm quite happy with his body, so I'm going to take my sky blue light and I'm going to go over everything with a reasonably heavy pressure. Just squish all that colour together, smooth it out a little bit, This is almost like using a white pencil to burnish, or a blender pencil, except we've got a little tiny tint of colour in it, which is quite nice as well. I'm kind of verging into that that highlighted area, but that's okay because it is a really light coloured pencil. You know, it looks okay. In fact, I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to go over the whole thing. There we go. And in this little corner here, really light tickle of the Peacock Blue, just because it's in behind his gill. And then I'll take this sky blue light again and blend it out. Okie dokie. Now down his head, the angle of his head is different to the rest of his body, so I foresee the highlight being down the top of his nose. So I'm going to do what I did with the last one and go really heavy with the Peacock Blue under here and down on his chin, and just a very light tickle there. And just bring this up again in line with the highlighted area. Now I'm being really light-handed here because this is like a super pigmented pencil. It doesn't take a lot of pressure for it to lay down, you know, a reasonable amount of colour, so just be careful with the Peacock Blue if that's what you're using. There we go. Quite happy with that. So you can see it is a wee bit darker in this corner, but not as dark as it is under his, you know, at his chin. And then just taking that sky blue light again, go to town with that. Scribble, 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 scumble, scumble, scumble. Down his nose a little bit as well. Super duper. Alright then, so for his fins, I'm taking the indigo, and that's not the indigo, that's the peacock. Very good, Jim. Try again. There we go. So I have the indigo here, and I'm starting really dark in at his gill, and sort of down in the bottom part here. And then I'm just going to lighten that up. I'm covering the whole fin this time. And underneath here, because of the shape of him as well, God, I'm really struggling for an angle here. I'm going to go really heavy in at his body, and then I'm just going to lighten that up as I come out. Again, I'm just tickling, but I am covering the whole area, and the opposite here as well. Not as heavy at the top though, because this is where the light's shining, or where our light source is. I wouldn't say there's anything particularly shining. There we go, and then I can take the Peacock Blue and I can go over everything. And I will press a bit heavier at the bottom because, again, it is the bottom. It's underneath. And then on the top here, a bit more lightly. Now I've just realised there's actually a gap in there. I don't know whether that's a missed line or that was an intentional, but I'm just going to join that up. There we go. Just to keep it all the same, keep it uniform. Oh, there's another part up here. I've already coloured over it, so I kind of don't have much choice, to be honest. I'm making this really, really dark in here where he disappears behind the big fish's fin. Pressing quite hard with that Peacock Blue. Okay. Oh yeah, he looks good. I'm quite happy with him there. I've just had a thought. I looked at this. It looks a lot more blue on the camera than it does in real life, and I'm just wondering if that is going to melt into our pastel background. Thankfully I have my little swatch here, and when I hold them side by side, the pastel is really green, so I have no concerns at all about that. I should really have checked that though before I started colouring this. In fact, I probably wouldn't have realised when we did the other fish down the bottom, because his backdrop is the fin of the fish, the tail fin. So that's, you know, I might not have picked it up there, but I should really have picked that up here before I started. Okay, so that is everything on this side of the page complete. How exciting. That's looking pretty good. I'm quite pleased with this so far. My little Kerby creatures are standing out fine and dandy, and everything else seems to fit in really well together in the picture, so I am really, really pleased with how we're getting on. Okay, so I'm going to take a look at this video length now, and I am probably going to speed colour maybe just one of the fishy fins. If I do it, obviously I will put it in the video and I'll have a wee chat to you over the top of it while I'm doing it. I would just like to point out as well, just while we're here, I'm going to tip this camera, look at the state of all these pencils and everything. Oh my goodness. I'm usually quite a tidy worker, So this stresses me out a little bit. I think I'm going to have to put some of these away. Oh my goodness. Anyway, I'll get tidied up and then I'll switch over and I'll do a bit of speed colouring over the other side. I don't really know how I feel about this, the speed colouring side of things. I know that a lot of you have voiced your opinions in that you don't like videos being sped up, but I really just feel that with being the double page and the fact that I'm using the same colours, etc., I thought it would be quite boring, to be perfectly honest, for you to have to sit through the same thing again. So I hope that you don't mind this too much. I do still think it's a good idea for you to see what I'm doing. You know, for some of you that maybe want a little bit more guidance, at least you can pause the video and you can slow it down and have a look to see roughly what I've put where. But again, it's one of those ones I'm trying to encourage everyone to kind of go their own way. I'm actually kind of hoping that some of you that are following along aren't using exactly the same pencils that I'm using. Does that sound weird? I don't know. But it's just really important for you going forward, if adult colouring is something that you want to have as a sort of longer term hobby, if you learn these skills, you're going to get much more pleasure out of it when it's something that you've concocted yourself rather than just following along with someone else. So I do hope that this is helpful in a sense. That's kind of cool. So I don't really have much all else to say, to be perfectly honest. So I thought I would tell you a funny farming story because that always seems to go down quite well. I was out at a dairy farm last week and I was actually telling one of the girls that I work with this story and she thought it was quite funny. We were talking about unfortunate incidents with cow poop and I'm sure you're all perfectly aware that cow poop is not the most pleasant of substances and on occasions it can be quite runny and also it can be very smelly. And so this particular occasion, I was working as a farm labourer at the time and it was while I was a student doing my science degree. The farm was owned by an elderly couple and their son, who I had known for, you know, a good 10 years before that. So I used to go up when I wasn't at university and do a bit of work for them. Now, the father was a very gentlemanly, old-fashioned chap and he was very, very polite, especially around the ladies. And he was always quite sort of well-to-do, but he was quite sort of gruff with it. You know, he wouldn't go and talk to the cows or stroke them or pet them or anything. And, you know, he's very sort of efficient and businesslike and say a bit stuffy. And there was one evening where we were finishing up and it was in the winter. And in the winter time, the cows were housed in an old byre. And the sort of layout of that was that there was a concrete path down the middle. And on either side, there were concrete stalls where the girls were put to bed, in inverted commas, in pairs in these stalls. So when you walk down the path in the middle, the cows' heads were against the wall and their tails were out towards this path that you walk down. So we were kind of shutting up shop and we were putting everybody to bed. And, you know, I always talk to my animals and, you know, make sure they're all right and everything and, you know, just kind of soothe them a little bit before we put lights out and things. So this particular evening, the father had gone into the byre in front of me to walk through to the other side to get to the house. And he didn't know I was behind him. And he started talking to the cows as he was walking through. And he said, right, girls, be good and night-night and... you know, and he's like chatting away to them and I thought, oh, how lovely is that? So he's saying this and he's moving his head left and right to talk to the cows either side as he's walking through. And as he walked past the last stall, the very last cow coughed, and as she coughed, she lifted her tail and had a bit of a projectile poop and it caught him square on the side of the cheek. I have never seen anything so funny in my entire life. It was almost as if she was waiting for him and took aim. Well, let me tell you, he wasn't so gentlemanly after that. There was lots and lots of sweary words coming out his mouth then. But one of those ones where, because the byres are big buildings, they're echoey, and I knew that if I made a noise that he would know that I was there and I had seen it and that I was laughing at him. So I was trying to use every ounce of my being not to laugh out loud. And of course, you know what happens there is it just makes it 10 times worse. And it was when he turned round and he had cow poop like dripping off the side of his face. I couldn't contain myself and I just burst into these explosive giggles. And he turned round and looked at me, and I swear blind, if looks could kill, I would be dead. But he was more embarrassed than anything else. But it was funny because we talked about it afterwards and obviously saw the funny side of it. But I think he was more upset by the fact that I saw him, like a soft side of him actually talking to the cows rather than the fact that he got cow poo down the side of his face. But honestly, you couldn't make stuff like that up. There's loads of stories like that. It's unfortunately a lot of them involve poo when you work on a farm. You can't beat a bit of cow dung. Anyway, that's me all finished. Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.